agenda, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Deborah sent it to me.
All right. We'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Kurt?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
Brandy? Here. Mark?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Jeff?
Are you there, Jeff? Maybe he'll call in. Jeff was supposed to call in, otherwise he's excused.
Eric?
Here. Okay, it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. I see none listed there, so we won't need to go through that. Item 4, amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. Is there any amendments to today's agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Mayor, I might want to just add under Assembly discussion item the thing that I brought up last week, but we kind of rushed to it because we had so much on the agenda about where the general fund revenues come from and what our expenditures are. I think Steve's going to touch on that, but if he doesn't cover all the bases, I wouldn't mind just adding a couple of lines.
Okay, so we'll put that as item C.
Thank you.
Budget talk. Okay, that brings us to item 5 on the agenda, and that's report of other officers. So, Brad, do you want to weigh in, or?
How do you want to? I mean, how do you want to go forward? Do you want me to walk through your FY18 priorities and tell you where everything is, or do you have something? Do you have something specific that you want to talk about first?
Out of this list on fiscal year 18, which ones do you feel are the most important that we should talk about? And does anybody on the Assembly have any specific questions for our lobbyist? I asked that he call in just so we could talk to him, you guys could talk to him in person. Steve and I had a discussion with him about a month ago, so. Steve?
May I step out of the room? Jeff's trying to call me, and I can try to maybe figure out what his problem is.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. So the manager is just leaving the room, Brad, but does anybody have any?
Let me walk through the items that really quickly that probably aren't going to require much discussion.
Sounds good.
And then we can narrow it down to the other items that are a little more live. The payment lieu of taxes, which I know you guys get around $600,000 a year on, that's really locked and loaded. They've moved out of the mandatory spending, which needs to be reauthorized, and like secure rural schools, and it's in the discretionary budget. Lisa Murkowski is the chairwoman of the Senate Interior Appropriations Subcommittee. She's fully funded TILT. Once they get a final budget agreement, and they will get it by Christmas this year, PILT will be fully funded, so that there's really no issues with that funding stream for the Petersburg Borough, which is good news. We were concerned on Essential Air Service a while ago that it would be a target under this new administration, and there were some early signs that people were going to target it again like they did 3 years ago. That petered out. Nobody's after EAS. It's fully funded within the budget as well. So there's really not that much concern about that program really at this point in time. Pink salmon disaster assistance, nothing's happening. What happened is we were hoping for a disaster that we could ride, and what we got was 3 disasters that were so overwhelming that the fisheries disasters got shoved to the side. We're still hopeful that Senator Murkowski might be able to pull something out on the final year budget bill, but we're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars right now in disaster for Texas and the Gulf Coast and Puerto Rico. And hello,
Is that
y'all
you?
still there?
Is that you, Jeff?
Did you hear? Okay, I heard a blip. I just didn't. So I'm really not optimistic that pink salmon's going to go this year. We're going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait until next year, and every year we wait, a little less likely that we're going to get it funded. So that, and then your dredging project. Stephen, you guys are in the middle of the study with the Corps, right?
Yes, sir. They've been out here several times and are going through the feasibility study as we speak.
Yeah, well, that program is funded both the investigation and construction in the Army Corps Small Navigation Projects program. And we've had a lot of support from the delegation about keeping that program funded at levels that would allow the Corps to move forward with your project if the investigation pans out for you. And that's fully funded in the omnibus in both the Senate and the House as well. So, if the budget bill passes by Christmas, there's no funding issues with the Corps continuing your investigation. So that's also good news. Mm-hmm. Those are the easy ones. So now let's talk about the ones that got some issues. Secure rural schools jumps out as a real problem. I know Stephen's very aware of it, but that's a mandatory spending program. It expired last year. Nobody got SRS payments this year. There's legislation to extend it over a 2-year period, but there's a cost to it, and they need to find a way to offset those costs, and they haven't been able to do it. There seems to be some interest at a fairly high level to do a 2-year extension, but they haven't moved forward with it. Sebastian, the guy that works with me, is a little more optimistic that they're going to be able to cobble something together next year, but I'm becoming increasingly pessimistic about it. Our Alaska delegation members have signed on to bills in the House and Senate to support a 2-year extension, but I don't see any momentum. I think this program is in serious jeopardy of not being extended and disappearing.
So one to lobby for.
What's that?
One to keep on our radar and encourage them to refinance it or to support it.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to be, not just our delegation, but the delegations all over the West need to continue to be hearing from the counties that are receiving important SRS payments that this has got to be done, or it's going to create a real problem with school funding. The one thing is we are going to. There's an election year next year, and there's. I think this is a significant issue in a number of those western counties that are suffering. So I expect there's to be some pressure on the House leadership in particular to try and move an extension bill to take care of some of these House Republicans out west. But that's definitely something that you all should continue to press and make a high priority for the Assembly's federal priorities, because we're an eyelash away from losing this program. And I know it's a significant amount of money for you. I don't know the exact amount, but I think your last payment was between $500,000 and $600,000. So
it is a large amount, yes.
So that's the one problem area. that I would highlight in any future resolution from the borough. The other issue is Coast Guard home porting issue for the new fast response cutters. Senator Sullivan held a hearing on the Coast Guard assets and infrastructure last week, and I attended the hearing. And he had a discussion with the commandant about federal fast response cutters, and he pushed him. Because the Coast Guard is going to deploy 6 in Alaska over the next 5 to 7 years. And it seems that they are wanting to home port the ships in pairs. We know Ketchikan's going to get 2 of them. And the other 4, they haven't made a decision on where to home port them, but they want to do them in pairs to reduce their operating costs. Sullivan was pushing him, saying 6 FRCs aren't enough to cover the entire Gulf of Alaska. We need more. And I think part of that is being driven by his desire to, home port vessels in more than 3 communities. But I think that's a problem area for us as well. I saw a document that I shouldn't have seen that the Coast Guard had put together trying to make the case that the range of these ships, 6 FRCs could have a bigger range than 7 of the old island-class carriers. And even though they made it clear in the document that this was only for demonstration purposes and not to be used as where they were leaning with respect to home ports, they basically ran the radiuses out of Kodiak, Ketchikan, and Seward. So my personal belief is the Commandant's going to come back to the Alaska delegation in a month and say, this is what we're planning on doing, and I'm not sure the delegation can move them off that. But that if I had to guess and bet money, my guess is those are the 3 communities that are going to get the pairs of FRCs, which would leave a big gap in Petersburg once they finally retire the Anacapa, which is going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years is my guess. So this is an area where you really got to keep the pressure on the Coast Guard and the Alaska delegation that we want an FRC to replace Anacapa, and if that's not going to happen, then we want another mission from the Coast Guard to be redeployed in Petersburg because we have the infrastructure to handle more ships, and the Coast Guard's got housing as well. So we did. I think your agenda has the memo, which is the mayor's letter to the delegation that kind of sets that case out. But that's an area that definitely is going to need some work and some high-level emphasis from the Assembly.
I see a couple other items on this priorities and projects list for 2018, but transboundary waters, British Columbia mines. I'm sure you've seen the recent letter that was signed by the governor.
Yeah, I was going to mention that they kicked the letter out. A week ago.
Right.
And I was, Sebastian was going to send it up, and I told him we were going to have this call, so he just gave it to me. But that's where, the continuing focus, you all did a resolution, I think in October, mid-October, on this very specific issue. And so the Southeast communities that are concerned about it, and I think Petersburg's probably voiced more concern than anybody else, they're the ones keeping this issue on the delegation's screen and the governor's screen. So, if you guys go quiet on it now, basically it'll undermine the effort. So I would continue to keep pressing that point that they need to have some agreement with the Canadians on, monitoring, the new mining activities to make sure that they're not going to pollute those watersheds. So I would keep that very high on the list as well.
Okay. I see sea otters is on there as well. I don't know if we've addressed that issue recently, but I know in the past the borough has taken a stance on that. What's going on back in D.C. about that? Anything?
Well, Sullivan had a hearing on subsistence whaling, an MMPA hearing on subsistence whaling about 3 weeks ago. And I think that's the first in a series of hearings that he's going to have on the MMPA. His people have told me they want to take a shot at reauthorizing the MMPA and trying to make some changes to address some of the issues Alaskans have been raising. It hasn't been reauthorized since 1994, so that gives you kind of an idea of how difficult it is to reauthorize that bill and to make changes to that bill. I don't think anybody's even thought about trying to reauthorize it in 15 years. So Sullivan's really taken this one on. What I would like to do, I mean, there are. I don't really know how to work this one. The easiest approach would be to convince the Alaska Native community in Southeast to make a request to be able to change the Fish and Wildlife Service regulations to allow them to take raw pelts as part of their native handicraft, to take and sell raw pelts as a native handicraft. But I'm not sure whether there's anybody organized within the Native community to even propose that, and it would really have to come from them. The other alternative is for us to come up with an amendment on our own that, gives the state of Alaska the ability to basically cull problem populations out. We could draft something up for that and justify it. It would be a heavy lift, though. Any time you try and change the law governing the protection of marine mammals, you bring the animal rights community out in force, and they can really gum up the work. But we're prepared to take that on if you all are serious about pursuing it.
I know there's still concern from the state government about the effects of sea otters, but I don't know what they're currently doing about it, if anything.
Well, I'm not sure they can do anything about it. It's under Fish and Wildlife Service jurisdiction. The state doesn't have management, and even if they did, I'm not sure they could call out problem populations. So, and they're never going to ask for management under the existing MMPA. It's too onerous for them.
Okay, so any questions from our lobbyists, from members on the Assembly?
You all want to give that some thought.
Right.
If you all want us to put together a proposal, we can do that, and we can dry run it with the Alaska delegation staff informally once you've taken a look at it.
Personally, I think it'd be worth looking at something, another, I don't know what you'd call it, I wouldn't call it a movement, but a new idea to try to do something about the sea otter impact in Southeast. How's the rest of the Assembly feel? This is something you just do on your current lobbying job for the borough?
Oh, yeah. This would just be another issue. We wouldn't ask for any more money.
In my opinion, it'd be worth seeing something different. Yeah. Member Walhuder?
Yeah. Mike, Kurt Walhuder here, Brad. I've been involved in this for quite a while there. It was back in the mid-'60s when the Nuclear Regulatory Commission decided to transplant some sea otters back out of the Aleutian down into Southeast because they wanted to blow up a harbor out in the Aleutian chain. So the feds actually, were, instrumental in bringing these sea otters back in here. So I think it's probably up to the feds to try to figure out how we can maintain a livelihood down here on something that was, indigenous at one time, but it was manageable. So now it's unmanageable.
Right. Do we have has the state done any studies, or is there anything in writing that kind of sets out the magnitude of the problem that we could take a look at?
You might
There's a lot
want
of fishermen screaming, but I'm not sure I can take that to the bank.
you might want to get a hold of Senator Stedman's office. He tried to impose a bounty on otters a couple of years ago in the legislative session, and it wasn't very well received, but now people are thinking it might not have been such a bad idea. And that was just to help offset the expense for the only people that can go harvest the otters, marine mammals, other species besides otters, is the natives. So, I don't know where that's at, but I know it's still being discussed.
Yeah, I mean, and the simplest solution, and we may come back to you with this. The simplest solution would be just to define traditional native handicraft to include raw skins, and then they could go out and hunt them. Then, hunt them and sell the pelts to the fashion industry, and probably make quite a bit of money on it, and that's the quickest way to cull the herd. I mean, if they have to take the pelts now and do their own handicraft, they're not going to take many pelts.
And it's quite expensive and time-consuming. There's a few local people that have tried it, and they have, to my knowledge, have basically backed off on it. But if they haven't changed the wording...
They might be able to find a buyer of raw pelts. The fur industry's coming back.
If they haven't changed Fish and Wildlife Service's description of what it is to modify an otter hide, it's significantly altered. And then they put the handicraft thing on it, and I understand that could be changed within the Fish and Wildlife Service itself without going to Congress. This was 8-9 years ago.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that as well. Maybe there's an administrative remedy to make it easier.
Well, I talked to one of the gentlemen from Anchorage from Fish and Wildlife Service, and I told him if I was skinned, I'd feel significantly altered, so you might want to put something like that in there. But anyway, he didn't laugh.
I hear you.
So anyway.
Okay, well, you all have Stephen let me know, but if you all decide you want us to become a little more active in actually coming up with a solution to put in front of Sullivan, a specific proposal, then we can do that.
And I would imagine that would hold more water if there was more of a region-wide support than just coming from the Petersburg Borough.
It would help, but we can do the initial background work to figure out what to do before we spread it out into the public arena.
Well, I think part of having you on the phone today was to discuss items you thought that were important. I guess we could give you direction at a later date, but we could do that as an assembly right now if we so desire. Anybody interested in that?
Okay.
Well,
like I said, I'm game. The scars on my back from the last MMPA thing I did have healed. So.
Okay, maybe you could send Steve a brief, just something that we could talk about at our next meeting to maybe give you some formal direction to draft something up if you feel we need to get something either from the administration or from the assembly here in Petersburg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll do that. When is your next meeting?
That would be December 6th, I believe. 4th is the first Monday.
Oh yeah, I can get you something well before then.
Okay, sounds good. And maybe at some point you could weigh in on whether you think we should come back. We talked about it at the last meeting, but you're aware that we decided not to try to make it in December of this year, so maybe when they come up with their schedule early next year, if Congress does, we could come up with some other dates and maybe.
I'll as soon as it comes out, I'll send. Let's see. When do you go fish? When do you fish? When do you take off?
March 15th is probably when I'll be leaving town for 3 weeks.
Okay, but are you gearing up the first 2 weeks? Is it a January, February date you want, or?
Well, just throw out the dates. January, February, when they come out with their calendar up to the end of the, like, say, the 12th of March.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Thank you, Brad.
We'll pick the weeks. We'll pick the weeks that they're both in session, both the House and Senate in session. There'll be a couple weeks in January, and I think 3 weeks in February, and possibly the first week in March. And I'll send those to Stephen as soon as they're out. I expect to see those early December.
Yeah, okay. So before you get off the phone, is there any other questions of our lobbyist? Jeff, are you hearing all of this discussion?
Yes, I am. I have no questions at this time.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, Brad, for calling in. Thanks for your time.
All right, folks, thanks. We'll be talking to you soon.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brad. Bye. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. There's one item, item A, 17-298, public hearing for ordinance 2017-15, an ordinance of the Petersburg Borough adjusting the fiscal year 2018 budget for known changes. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to testify to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, 7, bid awards. It's only one item, A, 17-305, Bicycle Seafoods Sectionalizing Switch Project Professional Services Contract. Entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved. Second.
A motion been made by Member Stanton Greger, seconded by Member Strand, and what this is the action would be Public Works Director Hagerman recommends award of a design/build professional services contract to Electric Power Systems of Juneau for the Icicle Seafood Sectionalizing Switch Project. A proposal was provided to the borough in an amount of $59,225 for the work. If awarded, the work may be able to be completed within a week of December 4th through the 8th. Is there any discussion or questions on this? Member Castro.
Yeah, Carl, I see this as Capital Project 701. Is this out of the Electrical Enterprise Fund or is it General Fund?
701 is a PMPL project fund, so that all the money that goes into that fund comes from Power and Light reserves.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Member Ball?
Were you guys all aware that this was part of that this was going to be part of this job, this part of the contract? I mean, was it before? And I mean, I'm unaware. Is this the first time that this has been brought forward, this portion of this?
As far as how it was going to be paid for or awarded, this is the first I've heard of it, but I know it was going to be divided into two parts all along, earthwork and then this part. So that's all I know about it.
Well, I mean, because originally it was going to be the Power and Light crew that was going to take care of this, correct?
That is correct.
So,
originally it was designed as an in-house project.
And so what projects do you currently have that you're working on that would make it so that you guys aren't able to do this in-house?
I'm going to defer to Scott on that.
Right now, we've got the crew we've got right now has got its hands pretty full with day-to-day business, such as line orders, services, trouble calls. A job like this, where we're going to have the trench open and pulling primary wire and stuff around the school, and we kind of need to get on it and just get it done. And as far as the crew is going to help as much as they can as far as delivering materials and stuff to if we get this, they would help them out a little bit. But right now, with the size of the crew we got, we can't just pull off and go take care of a trouble call if somebody's out of power. If we had a bigger crew, like we did 6 years ago, we had 6 linemen. Then you could take 4 or 5 guys out and say, okay, you go do this job and stay on it, until it's complete. Right now, you go to work, I can't send them up there and, okay, go to work and then, pull off and then go do line orders or run a service to a house or.
Well, other than the ditch being blocking the street, I mean, it's not crucial. It's done in a week's time, and the majority of this is being done. I mean, it's not live. I mean, there's nothing crucial other than the outage, correct?
Well, no, because you're going to have primary wire laying on the ground. That's insulated wire. You don't want people...
Well, right, but there should be I mean, like I said, other than the street part, you should be able to stop and go. I mean, if it takes a month, what does it, I mean, icicle's down. I mean, they're not in production mode is what I'm saying. So,
right.
I mean, I don't see why, if there's no other big projects, why you guys can't.
Well, we got to coordinate the outage too with, TU and...
But that's just for the outage portion, right? Which is 12 hours.
Right, yeah.
So whether it's 12 hours at the end of the month or 12 hours on the 9th, I guess I just don't understand why it can't be done in-house.
Okay, we have another member. Castro, you have a question?
No, just more of a question to Scott on this. So hypothetically, if we were to do it in-house, as Member Merle is speaking of, how long would you believe it would take if you were to just have the 3 linemen that we have?
Well, actually got 2 linemen, an apprentice, plus myself.
Correct. Thank you.
It just depends on what happens day to day. I mean, I can't say who's going to be doing what trouble calls we're going to have. The winter, you have a lot more trouble call in the winter because of freezing weather and 2 months, I don't know. It depends. You got the holidays coming up too where people are going to be gone. And to me, it's just be better on this project if we could just get it done and be done with it. Just, you know what I'm saying? Because that pole needs some serious attention. It's better we take care of it sooner than later, because I don't want to be the guy in charge when that thing's laying on the ground during herring season or something,
It's looking terrible.
I just think right now, with the size of crew we got, it's just not a good idea to try and do that, plus the day-to-day business.
Okay. Do you see it as a safety issue, perhaps?
Well, if you can't do, some of the stuff you can't do with a certain amount of people, we'd have to have our whole crew during the outage to do that. But not so much a safety issue. I mean, the guys are smart enough not to do anything wrong, but it's just the timing, I guess, and the manpower is the way I see it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on this matter? So what's the latest date you would like to see something like this completed? March for probably when the icicle ramps back up for herring?
Well, if they're going to talk to Nathan, and I'm not really sure. We was wanting to get it done sooner than later, I guess.
Right. Member Greger, Stan Greger?
Thanks. I'll talk from my 2 cents on it. Reading the end of Director Hagerman's memo here, Carl, is that accurate that if we award this today, we'd like to start going first week of December? Just to clarify.
That's a possibility. Nothing is for sure until we get a contract in place with the contractor, but they've been aware of it. They've been working on the proposal for a while now, and I was planning to have this in front of the Assembly long before now.
Sure.
But it's all coming together, and if we do get approval, we can take care of it in short order.
More or less Mr. Mayor, to get it, bust out the work while things are slow at Icicle, good convenient time of year, and get it done is what I'm hearing from you guys as the goal.
That has a lot to do with it. We know that Icicle's not doing anything right now, trading union. I think we can do an outage that isn't going to affect them, maybe after their hours, outside of their normal operating hours. This project's been languishing for a couple of years, and so it'd be nice to get it done with.
So, as I talked about earlier, this is in 2 phases. There's a retaining wall and some earthwork, and that's right on the corner by the middle school. Is that where they've got the sidewalk and stuff tore up now? Does that project have to be done before this can be done? Because if that's the case, I don't see any forms or retaining walls or anything, not snooping in your business, but I drive by there on my way home, and if this is how it's going to be done in phases, then that kind of puts this December 4th to 8th date, pushes it back, if one needs to be completed before the other, and I don't know if that's part of the plan.
That's a great question, Mr. Mayor. The projects are absolutely interrelated, and the dirt work portion had to be started so that the demo on the site could occur. The old retaining wall had to come out, and then the dirt work contractor is basically on the back shelf until the electrical part is done, and then they will come back in and rebuild all the concrete that goes over the top of the underground services.
So it's being done in the order it was proposed. I'm just curious, without much detail. You know, and another concern of mine is, or not, just, I don't know if call it a concern, but we're spending another $60,000 here unless it has some, you know, extra work, change orders, or whatever you want to call it. I'd like to, and I think the Assembly should be kept abreast of how this Power Light Enterprise Fund money that we agreed to use to do these projects, and one of the big ones coming up is the turbine rewind. We don't know how much, I'd like to know how much money we have left, like a checks and balances thing. If we spend this $70,000 or 60, what's that? Does that leave us plenty and have some cushion to address the turbine? I mean, not that we're right in the middle of this now, so we can't back out of it, but just curious.
Just, and I don't have this right in front of me, so apologize if the numbers aren't 100% accurate, but in the 24-9 capital project fund that Member Castro mentioned, the 701 fund, I believe there's over 300,000, about 330,000. Those funds are not counted for in the reserves of the department. So the 24-9 fund, the rebuild fund, is an ongoing project to do upgrades around town, and those funds don't affect the reserve balance. So I think, Jody can correct me, I think we're at 6.9 million or so in the reserves. So I think we're in good shape. Any work on this project, this 59,000, isn't going in no way jeopardize the rewind project at the hydro.
Okay, that was just another one of my concerns, and without having an answer, which now I have an answer for, I appreciate that. And, you know, the more work we can do in-house, I'd like to see it done just to offset costs. It'd be nice to get this project done and get it back online as well. So any other, Member Burrell?
Yeah, my only thing is that you have it scheduled for a week, and they had it planned, Electric Power, to bring 3 to 4 guys here. I just don't see how doing it in-house, I mean, you could use a month. And I think that that's reasonable if you're managing your time correctly. And I know that there's things that come out that you don't see, so maybe 6 weeks. But that still gives you the time frame to be within PFI being down and not being in production. So I personally don't think that it's necessary to spend $60,000 when we have the capabilities of doing it in-house.
We're also going to be losing our electrician, and the line crew's going to have to do what they can as far as harbors, his line orders, until we get another electrician on board. So they're going to have to pick up the slack for Gary, too, because he's going to be leaving us on the 8th. So that's another thing the line crew's going to have to, it'll be their responsibility to take care of the harbors and his line orders, and what we can take care of Gary's end of it, too. So that's just another thing that they're going to have to take care of, and might take longer.
Thank you, Scott. Is there any other questions or discussion?
Just one question about Gary. When was Gary tentatively leaving?
December 8th.
December 8th, okay.
About the time this could possibly be done, whether it is or not, who knows?
Right,
yeah. Without any other discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
No.
Mark?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, this item 17-305, the switch at Icicle, passes with the 5-2 vote with members Moreau and Jensen opposing.
I thought Jeff also opposed.
Oh, he voted yes. He voted yes, yeah.
Sorry.
I thought I counted right. Yeah. I write it down, so thanks, Kurt.
Sorry, my hearing.
Is there any visitors' views related to items on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to visitors' views unrelated to the agenda. I see no people in the audience with those views either. Board, commission, and committee reports. We have Liz Woodyard from the Petersburg Medical Center. Thank you, Liz, for coming.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I'm Liz Woodyard with Petersburg Medical Center, and I'm the CEO. And I'd like to just give a little update about what's been going on at the hospital. Well, we're happy to announce that our long-term care department was awarded a 5-star rating from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, which is CMS, for the care that we provide to our residents. This is the highest rating a nursing home can obtain. The rating system comes from our health inspections, our staffing levels, and the quality of resident care measures. So we're very proud of all the staff members who care for our residents. We're also excited to share that we have hired Bailey Kubernick, and she is a speech-language pathologist who joined our hospital on November 6th. Speech therapists help patients in the following areas: fluency, speech production, language, cognition, voice, renaissance, feeding and swallowing, and auditory habitation and rehabilitation. This is the first time that PMC has had a first full-time speech therapist, and we are excited to have a full spectrum of rehab services at PMC with PT, OT, and now speech. We're also committed to growing our own with staff and providing opportunities for members of the community to have a healthcare career. We have a new CNA class going on right now, and we're also partnering with the University of Alaska. We offer a 2-year RN program that started this fall. We have 4 students in the program, and the goal is for all of them to work at PMC once they graduate. We're moving along quickly with the kitchen remodel project, and it's going really well. Our dietary department has been doing a great job going between Ocean Beauty back and forth and using their kitchen, and we're appreciative of them allowing us to use the kitchen, but I'm sure they're going to be happy to be back, and it's going really well. And as you remember, that cost was right around $350,000 that came out of hospital operations. Also wanted to share some of the other capital improvement purchases that the board authorized for this fiscal year. The board authorized over $650,000 for these purchases, and again, all of the funding comes from our operational funds. We are updating the building climate control system to allow effective use of the new boiler and chiller. We're upgrading some IT hardware. We're planning to install an automatic door in the ER entrance, purchase a new exam table, buy 2 new beds, install a new nurse call light system, purchase an infant warmer system, a new range for the kitchen, and then lastly, a new DEXA unit, which will be in the radiology department, and that is used to measure bone density, and we've never had a DEXA unit too, so that'll be a nice new service to offer patients. Some interesting statistics for the month of October. We saw 63 patients in the ER. We had 16 surgeries. We saw 94 patients for x-ray. 36 patients had an ultrasound, and 41 patients had an EKG. We had 933 clinic visits, and this is just amazing. We washed 8,772 pounds of laundry. So that's a lot of laundry every day, and we served 1,154 meals. Our daily cash on hand is 85 days, so we're doing very well financially. We're also excited to welcome 2 new board members, Jared Cook and Cindy Lagadakis, and our other board members are Darlene Whitehorn, Marlene Cushing, Tim Keeneman, and George Doyle. We have 1 board vacancy. And I want to just thank you for the opportunity to share some information about the hospital, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about what we're doing.
Any assembly members have questions for Liz?
You said you have a new CNA class. How many do you have any enrollees so far?
We have 5.
All right.
So we offer CNA classes maybe 3 to 4 times a year. And then as people graduate, they get jobs.
Excellent.
Any other questions? Member Walter? Okay, well, Mr. Walter, first on you, Jeff, okay?
Okay.
Kurt?
Sorry, Jeff. So what was the clinic visit again for that?
933
$933, and that was for the month of?
October.
Just the month of October. Okay, that's incredible. All right, thank you.
Okay, Member Mucci?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thanks for coming with us. I had a question about the long-term care facility. Is there a standard fee that you charge for people staying at the long-term care facility and the treatment they get, or is that a variable fee that's charged folks?
It's variable from hospital to hospital based on the cost of care. So our fees are actually a little bit cheaper than maybe than Sitka, for sure, I know. But they're all in a similar range. But just like a hospital bed, how much it costs to stay in a hospital bed is determined by your cost, it's the same thing.
Did that answer your question, Member Mucci?
We're getting there, Mr. Mayor. So is there a way that I could get a breakdown of the daily cost for a long-term care stay?
Oh, yeah.
Or is that too broad of a question? Do I need to narrow it down a bit? Or?
Well, it's right around, it's about $21,000 a month.
Did you hear that, Jeff? It's $21,000 a month, or would you like a breakdown?
Yeah, $2,100 a month. So what is
$21,000.
$21,000 a
breakdown to a month?
Excuse me,
to a day.
You just have to divide that by 21,000 divided by 30. I don't have a calculator.
No, roughly
but
700.
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
Okay, so if it is $700 a day, Mr. Mayor, is there a way I could get a breakdown on what those costs are that total up to $700 a day?
She's thinking.
I'm pondering. I don't know if we just base it on our costs for what the cost of it is for the building, what staffing is, but most hospitals just have a cost per day charge. So we don't bill extra like for meals or nursing staff. It's all included. Laundry is included. All those things are included, so we don't break them down. Hospitals just have a cost per day.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
But those costs per day must be based on costs that it costs the hospital to administer a long-term care patient. And there must be some type of basis for that $700
right. We do a
day,
cost
right?
report. We have an annual cost report. And then CMS and Medicare and Medicaid, we kind of work with our cost report and we get a daily cost. But I'm sure our CFO, if you'd like to talk to Doran, I'm sure our CFO would be happy to work with you further on that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, that'd be great. I'll stop up when I get back in town next week.
Okay, thank you, Member Mucci. Any other questions of the CEO?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Liz, and I can understand you not having this, but you talked about emergency room visits. Do we have any feeling for how many of them might be related to opioid issues here in town? Or is that information you can even release? I know so much of this is...
Right. Well, we do track all emergency room visits by type of visit. And I'm part of that CHAIR coalition that we're all together working on trying to reduce substance abuse and track and trend. And we do have some data that we can pull. It's a fairly small number, but we do have that data. I don't have it on the top of my head, but we have given that data to the coalition.
Member Roll, do you have a question?
Yeah, what's the name of that coalition? It's different from the homeless one, right?
Yep, it's called SHARE, and Petersburg Mental Health leads that and coordinates it, and there's many different groups from the community that are involved with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Les? Thank you, Les,
Okay,
for
thank
filling
you.
us in. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, consent agenda. There is no items there. Mayor's report. We're still looking for letters of interest from qualified borough residents to serve on our community by filling a vacant board or commission seat. We have one seat on the hospital board and 3 vacant seats on the Public Safety Advisory Board. In addition to that, we have some seats on the Historic Preservation Committee. There's 2 vacant seats, one for an archaeologist and one for an assembly member. Those terms will end 12/31/2017 for the archaeologist and 12/31/2019 for the assembly member. Those letters of interest, if anybody wants to submit them, can be mailed to Box 329, Petersburg, Alaska, 99833 through the borough clerk or email, and all that information is online. And now we have Southeast Alaska Power Agency Board of Directors. This is an annual appointment by the member utilities, Ketchikan, Wrangell, and Petersburg. I asked the deputy clerk to print off a, and Jeff, sorry you won't have this, but it's how we go about selecting these. It's not in our code, it's not in the charter. It's just by the bylaws of the Southeast Alaska Power Agency. And each member utility shall notify all other member utilities in writing of its designated director and alternate to the board. So that's just highlighted on this page. The right of a member utility to appoint a director or an alternate to the board is not transferable to any other entity or person without the prior unanimous consent of all directors. I guess what I'm getting at is this has always been done in Wrangell and Ketchikan by just appointment of the mayor. So there's 4 names. One other name came in after the deadline to get stuff on the agenda packet, and we did have a deadline for that was the 14th. And next time we advertise for this, I think we should maybe put a deadline when we accept letters for this type of a thing. So anyway, there's John Jensen, myself, Bob Lynn, and Gary Morgan put his name in. So if the assembly wants to vote on these, we'll do it by a closed ballot. Otherwise, I will appoint like the other mayors do. What's the assembly want to do? Member Strand.
Personally, I'd like to vote on it with a closed ballot.
Okay. Is that how we're going to proceed?
That works.
That's my motion. Okay. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll write, there's 2 sections to this. We're going to vote to see who of the 4 get appointed to the 2 seats, alternate and voting member, and then we'll vote to see which one of those will be the voting member and which one will be the alternate. Because who knows how the votes are going to come out. I think that would be cleaner.
Can you repeat that, please, Mr. Mayor?
2 sections. We need 2 people to be appointed to the SEPA board for the calendar year 2018, starting January 1st.
Okay.
And once we determine out of the 4 who those 2 are going to be, we will decide who the voting member is going to be and who the alternate will be.
We'll further narrow the field. Got it. Thank you.
So I guess we just put down 2 names for who we want to be on the board for 2018. And it takes 4 to decide anything on this panel.
Yep.
And the names have to be spelled correctly for them to be asked.
Not necessarily. We'll leave that at the interpretation of whoever's counting. That will be the borough clerk.
The 3.
I already passed them.
Trying to save you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I texted my name to the city manager.
Right, yeah, okay. Yeah, we are, Mindy has Steve's phone, so we are counting your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Okay, so Gary Morgan, 2 votes, Bob Lynn, 5 votes, Mark Jensen, 4 votes, and John Jensen, 1 vote.
Okay, so that means Bob and myself will be on the SEPA board, and now we will vote again from those 2 to see who will be the voting member and who will be the alternate. So it's either Bob or Mark. So let's just vote for the voting member. How about that? Let's make it simple. I guess it's kind of obvious what the other one will be then.
Got it. Voting just for the voting member.
These aren't even big enough to keep an airplane on. No, not so much.
Efficient.
We can airmail the answers in.
Definitely could I could throw it.
You can tell Jeff that, yes.
A lot of weight with that one.
Mr. Mayor, you can tell Jeff that Mindy got his votes.
Your vote's going to be counted, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Looks like it's Bob as the voting member.
Okay. Is there a number of votes?
5 for Bob, 2 for Mark.
Okay. Okay, we've appointed the Southeast Alaska Power Agency Board of Directors for 2018. Next year, Ketchikan will have 3 voting and 3 alternates. The following year, we will have 2, like Wrangell has 2 this year. That's just the way the system was set up. Next item on the Mayor's Report, Southern Southeast Regional Aquaculture Association Board of Directors is looking for someone from the Assembly. I'll go read the whole thing. Sarah, Board of Directors includes 1 position established for municipalities within the region. The Assembly is invited to nominate an individual by December 1st, 2017 to serve during 2018 and 19 in this regional position. So I guess we need to make a decision now. And it doesn't sound like it has to necessarily be someone from the Assembly, just someone from the municipality. I would be willing to put my name in if no one else is interested, or unless someone else has a name they would like to submit. Member Strand.
Who is our present representative?
That I'm not sure, but I believe Member Walter.
I'm on NSERA, but I just resigned because I just way too much on my plate. So there'll be another opening for NSERA. But
right. And so you just resigned? So that term.
I just resigned for this at this last meeting. Yeah.
So we'll make a note of that.
Yep.
Remember, Willard, does this take a lot of effort? I mean, is this, you said you had to design?
Twice a year.
Okay.
2 meetings a year. You know, basically, and all you are is a board of director, and then they also have an executive board. So you're there to put input, like at a Board of Fish meeting, you know, to represent, your community on issues that they may seem pertinent to that, but then, so you just get a voice out of like 25 people.
Member Castro, are you expressing interest? If you are,
gosh, no.
Okay.
I'm already liaison to.
Right.
You do get free airfare, hotels, and stipend for food and stuff down there. So.
Point of clarification, we're not talking about this one right now, are we?
Well, NSERA and Sarah are both the same. They both operate about the same. Yeah. So no money out of your pocket, basically.
NSERA is Northern, Southern, Southeast Region. You don't have the acronym. Okay, so we're just talking about appointing to Sarah at this point. If they want someone by December 1st, which is before our next meeting, so Member Stanberger.
Mr. Mayor, I have since you've expressed interest, I support you in taking that on.
I'll second that, if there needs to be a second.
Okay, well, we're going to appoint somebody or nominate. I guess we're just nominating. You might not want to do the nomination, so we'll see how that goes. So is that the will of the Assembly to nominate me for this position? I'm willing to do it.
Did we ever figure out who our present representative is? If Kurt is NSERA?
I don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We don't currently have a member of the Assembly that's on that board. There may be somebody in Petersburg that's on it. I think when they throw this out, they throw it out to all the communities, so they don't parse it out by community necessarily. Did that make sense? I mean, we don't currently have somebody unless there's somebody in the community already on that board that I'm unaware of.
So possibly, without detailed description, this might just be a nomination from someone from your borough or your municipality, and it goes into the whole Sarah region, and then they choose a vote who they want, possibly.
I believe that's how it's being done.
So we have members in town, Member Strand, that are on the board of fishing. Max Borhatch is the president of the board, I believe, and then there's a few other
Bob Martin.
different, Bob Martin. So we have people from Petersburg, but this is just representing the municipality. So I'd be willing to throw my name in the hat and whatever the protocol is for getting selected. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Was that, okay, Jeff, was that an aye for opposing or aye for approving?
Approving.
Okay, 7-0. All right, moving on. Pretty big day last Thursday on the 16th. Governor Walker came to town and signed our lands bill, which went through the legislature last year. I'd like to thank the legislature for passing that, Senator Stedman's office for getting the ball rolling on that, especially Randy Guerrero as chief of staff, worked with DNR the year before the legislative session and got him up to speed on what we were asking for. Liz Cabrera was instrumental from Petersburg in doing that. I testified a few times. Our lobbyist was involved in it. Our Representative Christ Tompkins, along with Sam Keto, helped carry the bill through the House side. So what that does is gives Petersburg 14,666 acres within our borough boundaries to use for things it sees fit. And I would, our land selection committee will have to finalize or make a detailed description of the land they want, and I believe that will all come before the Assembly for approval. Steve, do you have something to add? Or?
No, just exactly that, yeah. They make a recommendation, the Assembly has to ratify the list before it goes to DNR.
Right, okay, thank you. So that was a pretty good day. The last Municipal League Conference, myself and Member Merle attended. It was pretty interesting. One thing I think we should keep our eye on is this House Bill 199, Fish and Wildlife Habitat Protection, is going through the legislature, proposed by Member Stutz from Kodiak last year. And fish habitat is what they're trying to protect, but it might be a little bit too restrictive. Any stream, even if it only has water in it, and the heavy rain is going to be considered anadromous. And now they have a cataloged group of streams that are recorded as anadromous, and that's what has to meet certain criteria before you can do projects, road building, culverts, or land development. This, you would have to prove that it wasn't. So it's a little bit too restrictive, and I think we should keep an eye on that. One thing that would be impacted is if this goes through, all of our wastewater plants in Alaska, the permitting will be good until they expire, and then you have to go through this process, and it could be very difficult. Even to put a culvert in, to put a driveway in, might require this. So, maybe at some point during the next legislative session, our body might want to make a comment on it. Also, there was this opioid panel that was made up of these 7 people, and I saved a list of this, and this has been put into place by Mayor Burt Cottle from Wasilla. He's been working on this for a few years. Last year, I wasn't very optimistic when I attended, but this group of people was very, very good. I'll give this to the clerk. Jay expressed interest in getting a copy of it. I already gave a copy of this to someone that works at Petersburg Mental Health, but maybe that should be given to their staff. This panel is made up of many people that are recovering from opioid abuse, and they've formed a business that houses people and helps them through safe recovery. And so it's Member Merle said it on this too, I think.
Yeah.
She enjoyed it. If you have something to say about your visit and your newly elected officials.
No, the training was great. It was very informative, and the conference there was a lot of different workshops that had a lot of, from the gas line to opioid and homeless homelessness crisis and the opioid crisis in town, or in not just town, in the state, even on a federal level. And there was just a lot of good information and just different people in different communities and how they're trying to attack this basically and fight it. It was very interesting. There was lots of, I'm glad I attended. Thank you guys for letting me go.
I think it's a very informative class. So it's enough time on the mayor's report. I don't have any, well, let me look at my notes.
Mark? Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Member Casper.
Yeah, well, I hate to backpedal just a little bit, but, you know, we got into the voting before I had a chance to be able to say that, but, you know, I'm relatively unaware about what the SEPA board does, and I feel that a large portion of the public may feel the same way, and I was wondering if, since you've been on it for a while, if you might be able to just kind of add some clarity to that.
Well, to go back in a long history, SEPA was formed when the Fort-Am pool was dissolved, and that was when I first became a council member 11 years ago. And the board of directors is from the 3 municipalities. There's one at large, and it goes by the hydro projects. Swan Lake by Ketchikan always has 2 votes. Tyee always has 2 votes, but Wrangell and Petersburg comprise those, unless you get the roaming. So 5 people, 5 voting members, 5 alternates, and you just talk, you know, about the business and direction you want to go with the agency. This next meeting will be in Petersburg, the 13th and 14th of December, and I believe after the meeting, the manager and Power and Light are going to talk with SEPA about, you know, what their opinion, the best direction for our hydro rewind at, you know, out the road will be. Another thing that's going to be discussed in executive session is we're getting back all the reports for a new hydro developments, or new, you know, ways to move forward with the system. It could involve third turbine at Tyee or what have you. But it just runs the business of the Southeast Alaska Power Agency, the 2 dams that provide us the 6.8 cent wholesale power, and has for 19 years. So it's nice to have a local presence, and that's the way it was set up when it was divested from Fort-Am Pool.
Awesome.
Steve?
Yes, I mean, just a couple, just from listening to Trey speak, who's the CEO of SEPA, 2 issues that kind of commonly get forgotten about what SEPA provides value to. Number one, because they're focused on, you know, the marine cables, the transmission lines, and the 2 dams, they also have some expertise that it would be really difficult for each of the individual utilities to employ if they weren't handling a bigger, you know, whether it's both dams and lots of transmission. We couldn't afford to have that level of expertise on staff here and in Wrangell and in Ketchikan. So the fact that SEPA handles the whole system, they can pay some professionals to be involved. And the other is one that we don't think of a lot, but it's risk management. The fact is, they own these facilities. So when it comes to dealing with FERC, federal, you know, people, dealing with any issues related to risk and liability if something was to fail, it's all on SEPA. And we're not trying to pass the buck there, but it's something that really takes the municipalities out of it so that the local government doesn't have to take those huge risks associated with, you know, 2 hydro facilities, marine cable, and the various substations that are involved. So Marquette, the stuff, great, but those are 2 other things I guess you could add to the list that SEPA does.
Right. I can't remember how many miles of submarine cable there are in this system, but it's the price tag for them is close to $60 million.
14 miles of submarine cable, 175 miles of overhead transmission.
Right, and so, and so you approve expenditures. We just put marker balls on all the overhead cables that were fading, and just to keep up to FERC standards, and so it's pretty interesting.
Excellent, thank you.
It's nice to have some longevity on the board, because you know, the history of the whole system and interacting with other communities, personalities, gets interesting at times, as you can imagine. But it's a great deal for us. Thank you for asking. With that being said, I guess, one other thing. Did we ever decide, we had this discussion before the meeting, a couple of us, did we decide a time, if anybody recalls, to have a joint meeting with the hospital board? Liz, did we send you any information?
We cannot coordinate people's schedules. Debbie's been reviewing, so we're just waiting to hear when it's
Okay, so I guess that was kind of what I thought came out of our last meeting. And also, correspondence with our clerk, the appeal hearing date, the second hearing is going to be on November 29th at 3 p.m. Are we going to have a quorum for that?
Looks like it.
Okay, so we're good then.
Yes, I think we're good.
That's it. Steve, your manager's report, please.
Yes, sir. We had 2 Medicaid cases at assisted living that finally came through. We can now back bill for 4 months, which is good news. Working on the provider re-enrollment with both Medicaid, which is our federal primarily source of money coming in, and General Relief, which is a state agency. Most Borough facilities are closed on Thanksgiving, 11/23, so call us if you need something before you come down. Small Business Saturday is being hosted by Katie Eckley. This will be on the 25th of November in the Community Center Gym. Everybody is invited to join in on the shopping fund. This is similar to the Small Business Expo that Parks and Rec used to sponsor. It's one of those things that as we try to find things to, I hate to say cut, but spend less money on and staff time on, this was one that Parks and Rec kind of bowed out of, and we found Katie's going to try to run that, so that's great news that it gets to continue. We've contracted with Devon and Homeport Electronics to take a look at some of the community center's technology issues that we've been having. He's going to take a look at everything and get a list back to us of what he recommends we do. This is everything from a phone system. Parks and Rec currently is tied, it literally is on the school system's phone system, so the handsets and everything, and it's going away the 31st of December of this year. So we need to figure out what we're going to do for phones at Power and Light, Parks and Rec. We also continue to have issues with the cameras, both in their ability to stream and be viewed on the internet by the staff, as well as storage of the information. Our loudspeaker system has not been working. We've got some issues with the backroom pool controllers not connecting to the right IP addresses, and we're likely going to need to run some internet wires to the aquatic center so that they're working on the borough's internet instead of a separate system. This goes back, ran some extra wires because the cameras weren't working that was separate from what the rest of the internet provided was. We've managed to upgrade some of our fiber lines. The belief is we can pull that back in-house and get good service and not have to pay an extra monthly access fee for internet. Our Wi-Fi system at Parks and Rec is spotty at best. He's going to take a look at that, and hopefully all of this should involve us being able to drop a secondary internet feed and pay a little bit less money up there. We have ordered a boom lift from Alaska Fiber to replace some of the aquatic center lights that are out until the replacement project can be scheduled. I believe that's supposed to be here coming in this week, and we'll start replacing the lights that we can reach with it, and hopefully keep the light in the pool area bright enough that we don't have to shut the pool down awaiting the project. Congratulations to Officers Wachter and Tate. They have returned from the Academy training in Fairbanks, finishing first and second in their class. Family members of both the officers and where we sent up Captain Hamilton were able to attend the graduation ceremonies and pin their badges on them. And hopefully we keep them both. I think they're both pretty invested in the community, so it's great news. I want to send out our condolences to the family of former District Attorney James Scott. He was our DA for quite a while. He passed away on the 11th of November of this year. The startup for the new, as you heard earlier, the 350 generator is scheduled for kind of the week of December 11th, in that time frame. This is the primary generator that feeds this building, and we knew going in needed to be upgraded and replaced, and thanks to all of the folks who have been involved in that in Power and Light, and Gary Morgan and whatever contractors. Wanted to thank the line crew and Public Works for all the work they put in on the Christmas decorations. We take it for granted in a lot of ways. We put in, roughly a week, Scott, between here and then Public Works, about a week's worth of labor hours. We're putting the tree up, decorating the tree, all of the electrical work and stuff associated with it. So it's not a cheap undertaking to do it, but happy to make everybody feel more festive. As you heard, our borough electrician, Gary Morgan, has turned in his resignation. He will be leaving on December 8th. He has also said that if the 350 is still in progress, he'll stay, an extra week to help finish it up there. So we'll have that potentially done in service. Just wanted to thank him for all of his help. The Friends of the Library held their annual general meeting on October 21st. Thanks to all of the Friends for the time they volunteer and the money they raise for Petersburg libraries. Their monthly book sale continues to have excellent attendance. In addition to supporting many of our youth programming, the Friends also recently made a $4,000 donation to the Story Pole and the Shelter Project that is scheduled for 2018. December programs in the library include lots of kids' activities and both an author event and a painting class with local artist Janine Gibbons. Glorianne spent a morning as part of the transition program, which is a statewide thing, with a group of Petersburg High School students explaining the services provided by the Harbor Department. The kids were interested in what skills are needed to work in the various positions. I don't know how many other borough employees, including myself, went over and addressed the group and talked about different jobs in the borough and different jobs that I've held in my life, different jobs, in the skill sets that they need to have to be able to achieve some of those. Harbor staff is working with 3 search and rescue volunteers to learn how to operate the harbor security boat and get them certified. It's really helpful to have a few more operators available for emergencies when needed. The Public Works staff completed the pipe work on the Pump Station 7 force main on November 9th. It's in service and is working well. We're pretty much done with the cleanup that we can do in the wintertime because of freezing weather. Definitely we'll be back in the spring to dress it up, patch driveways with concrete, and make sure that it's up to our normal standards. We just ran out of time, and when we tried to dress it up, the ground had already frozen, and it doesn't dress well when it comes up in chunks. Wanted to also recognize the City and Borough of Wrangell's Public Works Department for allowing us to borrow their pipe fusion machine when our rented machine failed in the middle of the project. Water staff recently had the Alaska Rural Water Association technicians in Petersburg to test and certify various backflow prevention that are part of our water system. The Rural Water Association provides this service at a discount to its members, which saves the water utility money annually. Rainforest contractor subcontractor Reed Brothers Construction completed the demolition at the retaining wall. You heard a little bit of that earlier, and thank you for the award on that, and we will get started with them as soon as we get a signed contract. And the model building for Power and Light is going well. We're moved off of demolition and to make way for the new footings for the front of the building and the new parking lot retaining wall at the back of the building. Chris Giannotti, the structural engineer with P&D Engineers, recently visited the site to inspect the new beams that will carry the second floor corner above the building cutout. He was happy with the contractor's work so far. So it's looking good. And I'm done. Let's just questions.
Any questions of the manager's report?
Yes, I just had one.
Member Castro.
You mentioned how we purchased a boom truck from Alaska Fiber. Are we renting it from Tyler, or did we buy it?
We needed we're renting. I mean, we needed a propane powered one. We can't put a diesel inside that building because of the fumes. So we had to get a propane powered that also had the lift or the reach to get to some of those lighting fixtures. So no, we don't own one.
Interesting. Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jeff, you have any questions of Steve's report?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I have one question. This contract with Homeport Electronics, that's just to give an analysis of what needs to be done?
At this point, yeah.
Okay. And then
if I may,
will it go to a bid after that? Or will it just be awarded to
I can, if I may speak to that.
Yes.
In this current budget year, we were authorized to hire an IT person. We've never done that. I'm sure Jody resents me like all hell for not doing that. We've tried to spend it locally and avoid adding a person to staff, to be honest with you. So we've used Devon in quite a bit. He's gone into the server room and moved stuff around for us. We can clearly put it out for bid, but traditionally what I would do here is once he gives us a report, if it's within our budget or in a spending thing, I would authorize it. I have a feeling this is stuff that's probably going to have to be budgeted for next year, but we don't have it, and so in which case it'd be in front of the assembly as built into next year's budget. Again, I don't know that until I see what he finds. But
I was just curious, the scope of the work and the cost associated with it is all.
I don't know yet. I'm hoping it's not a big deal, but it may not be.
So any other questions of the manager? Seeing none, we'll move on. Unfinished business. Ordinance for third and final reading. This is ordinance 2017-13, an ordinance providing for repeal of Chapter 3.16 of the Code of the former City of Petersburg, now Service Area 1. I'll entertain a motion to approve this or adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Greger, seconded by Member Strand to approve or adopt ordinance 2017-13 in its first reading. Any discussion?
Just for those, thank you. Just for those listening at home, this is more or less us doing some housekeeping, cleaning up language because it says it's no longer needed for the Borough Municipal Code.
And this is in regards to the IT position, is not? Is it not? Did I read that right? Or
Yeah, it is.
yeah, it is. So any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2017-13 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. There's also an ordinance for second reading. This ordinance 2017-15. This is an ordinance of the Petersburg Borough adjusting the fiscal year 2018 budget for known changes. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Castro to adopt ordinance 2017-15 in its second reading. Is there any discussion? Just for the people listening, if adopted, it will spend down remaining reserve from the road special reserve fund to pay for the asphalt crushing project. This was approved by the Assembly in September. It will also reduce the police department payroll expense due to the loss of airport security officer revenue from the state, and therefore a reduction in the police officer position. And will also add $39,500 to Petersburg Municipal Power and Light budget for superintendent recruiting costs. Will increase budgeted funds to pay for the Petersburg Municipal Power and Light 350 generator replacement. And that was budgeted last year but not paid for. We'll budget for the Rasmussen grant awarded to the library and the expense incurred for the Story Totem Pole. We'll budget from the Economic Fund the local cost sharing for development of Scow Bay Turnaround that was approved by the voters. And it will add $60,000 to contingency money for the Petersburg Municipal Power and Light headquarters building remodel. And it was unanimously approved in its first reading. So if there's no other discussion, will the clerk call the roll? Is there any other discussion? Looking around the room, I see none. Mindy?
Nancy?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2017-15 passes unanimously. Now, under new business is, or unfinished business is 17-302, Petersburg Municipal Power Light Superintendent Recruitment Process. I'd entertain a motion to approve this process.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Walhuter. Is there any discussion? And then I guess we need to, is it too soon to pick the first 2 assembly members, Steve, or do we need to go do that today?
It'd be wonderful to have the first 2.
Okay, and then we could discuss the other 2.
Yes, sir.
Farther on. And I had one question about this process. When all the groups get together to discuss the candidate for this position, is that going to be an executive session?
I think we're going to have to do it that way. I haven't spoke to Sarah yet, and it may, clearly our backup plan would be to kick at least one assembly member off the group, so we're not an official meeting. But I think it can be done in executive session.
I was just wondering if that had been discussed. It seemed like...
Yeah, I have not done that with the attorney yet, but we're assuming we can. We'll run it by her before we get to that point. And like I said, if worst case scenario, we would ask one of the 4 assembly members to bow out, so we stay at 3.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? I guess we could read through it for the people listening. To start the process, Manager Giesbrecht, Clerk Thompson, and Deputy Clerk Swihart will screen the resumes that are sent in. Second step, Manager Giesbrecht, Clerk Swihart, and 2 assembly members will conduct initial screening by Skype. Manager Giesbrecht, the third step, Manager Giesbrecht, Deputy Clerk Swihart, and 2 assembly members will identify top candidates for a visit to town. During the visit, a board interview with 2 different assembly members, 2 department heads, and Deputy Clerk Swihart will take place. And during the visit, an individual interview will take place with Manager Giesbrecht. And then 6, the entire group gets together to discuss who to offer the job to and outline the details of any job offer. So, with that being said, who would be willing to be on the list of the first 2 assembly members? Yeah?
Question, when do you think that this first meeting might occur?
We've got some local candidates, and we have some people from the outside world. But I can tell you that we don't have a large number of either yet. We had set a deadline of December 1st as a cutoff, so we'll see over the next week or so. If I don't see an awful lot of stuff coming in, we might want to extend that. Mindy's going to look at some of our ads run out. We ran them for 30 days, so we'll look at that first. My hope was that we'd be doing these kind of interviews the first or second week of December. We might have to push that till after the holiday if we need to get more resumes in. I know I'm not being super specific, but...
Member Borough?
Oh, I was just going to say, is that why you're kicking me? I'd be interested in being...
Volunteer.
Yeah, one of the 2, either first or second, I don't care, in the interview process, but...
Well, we have 2 that put their name in that could be for the first, Member Strand and Member Burrell. There we go.
Harrison, would you mind me kind of talk a little bit about the difference between the 2 aspects? I mean, that may help.
No.
The initial screening, I look at often is a technical thing. Is that's the opportunity to kind of make sure that these people have the requisite skills for us to spend money to bring them to town. The second one, when they're here, is more of a fit and feel type thing. Do they fit our community? Do they fit the people that, the staff? Yes, still you touch on technical stuff. But that first screening interview is often the best time to make sure that we're not wasting money by bringing somebody here that absolutely just doesn't have the skills to do the job. So I don't know if that helps any of the assembly members to know the difference. But requisite skills are also project management, those other things too. It's not just technical electric skills. But that's kind of how I do these. You want to screen them off on the technical stuff so we're not spending a bunch of money bringing them here. And then the second time it's all about, do they fit in, in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for the explanation. Any questions of this process or of Steve?
No, just wanted to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Wanted to thank Member Morrell and Member Strand for volunteering to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to note that with this intensive an effort, it can be really well assured that this will be a very transparent process.
That's good. Yep, very good. So we need a, will the clerk call the roll on the vote to approve this procedure?
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Okay, this passes unanimously. We'll move on to new business. Future planning, item A, 17-299. The manager has proposed some future planning ideas. I'd entertain a motion to approve this suggestion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Castro. Discussion. And what this is, for the people listening, is the manager has proposed this effort to gather information from the community on ways to reduce costs and or increase revenues. And he suggested this approach. This is the timeline. Advertise these meetings November to December, and these would be public meetings. Conduct the meetings and manage the email submissions in January. Build a list of suggestions in February. Research impacts of implementation of suggestions in February. Publish results to the public in February. Assembly to prioritize items from the list in March. Hold public hearings with the Assembly March and April. And schedule implementation, if that's what the Assembly desires, of these ideas approved by the Assembly. So, Member Stan Gregor.
Just wanted to recognize Steve and your staff for putting the effort into this, and encourage all members of the public to participate, give feedback. Help is the short answer. So thank you guys for your efforts.
Member Borough.
Yeah, I wanted to basically say the same thing as Jay. I think this is a great idea. Gives the community a chance to speak their mind and weigh in on things, and
Thank you.
about it.
Member Walter.
And one way that the community can get involved in this is either come by the city office or go on the Petersburg website and get the get this little printout that Jody worked on where our general fund revenues come from. It's a really simple one page, and then on the back of that page is a general fund expenditures. So you'll have some idea where your money is coming from and where your money goes. So I would encourage everybody to look at that before they come to those meetings, so that you have some idea what's happening there.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may just, and thank you very much, Kurt, Brandy, Jay. I do want to say one thing about the general fund versus enterprise funds. Enterprise funds is where we're hurting the most. I think that's I think that's a standard message. We've talked about it for a while. It's where we're most limited in our ability to deal with stuff. But I don't want folks to not think of ideas to save on the enterprise funds. I want to encourage people to bring us ideas on everything. The reason for that is the enterprise funds are all about cost of living. And your power bill goes up, your water prices go up, your garbage rates go up. It costs people more money to live here. So despite what my enterprise fund department heads would love it to be, I do pressure them on saving money because it's a cost of living thing. I mean, we can fix a budget problem in Power and Light by raising the rates. Takes 3 votes to the Assembly and away you go. But then it's suddenly more expensive for everybody who lives here. So when we start talking about ways to save money, I am not limiting it to just general fund, although clearly that's where we have the biggest challenge. I do look at enterprise funds, and we try to make sure that that's as big an issue in some ways, because it does come right out of people's pocketbooks. So again, thank you, Kurt, for that, but I do want people to give us ideas on the enterprise funds as well.
Just one more follow-up there, Steve. So we had talked about this earlier. So these 3 different meetings that you're going to have, they're going to be very specific departments that we're going to talk about, right? We're not going to just do a real general thing. We'll say, let's talk about public works, or let's talk about public safety, or let's talk about community, other services such as library and community gym and that sort of stuff.
Honestly, I'm not sure yet. Okay. I want it as broad as we can make it. I don't want to discourage people to... because we can get interesting ideas from people that have no idea that they have an idea. So if I limit it to this meeting is only about public works, I'm afraid it'll stifle some of that, creative juices among people. On the other hand, it's a pretty broad thing. We may do one meeting and see how it goes and say, okay, that was just way too broad. We need to invite people to come down and talk about just the enterprise funds. Honestly, I haven't, my fault, I haven't gotten to that point yet, other than we would, something that worked really, really well during our comprehensive plan was the consultants, and they put poster board up all around the room. Public Works, Power and Light, I'm making this up, Harbor. And they encourage people to write their idea on a sticky note and stick it to the wall. And, the secret there is making sure we have a way to get back in touch with people to say, please decipher your idea for us so we can get enough details to scope it out. But we might try that the first time, where we literally just, it's opened up on anything, and come in and put your sticky note on the wall. It tells us what you think is a good idea, and then we go back in and say, okay, let's figure out what this person meant. And then the second sets of meetings might be more specific. Hey, we got a bunch of ideas in Power and Light, we need to get more information. Or we got a bunch of information on Parks and Rec, or whatever. I think at least up front, the best way we can do this is to allow it to be really broad, and then figure out from there if we need to get more specific as we get into it. I also want to make it as informal as we possibly can. I hear from people all the time, this meeting scares people. Okay, they don't want to come and talk because it's very formal. So I'm going to try to go the other way with this and make it very, very informal, and hopefully that encourages people to come in and open up. May or may not, we'll see. So.
It'll flesh itself out, I think, by the time we get there.
Yeah, I think this is a good approach, Steve, to hopefully and get the public involved. And one thing I didn't read, I just kind of summarized the lead into the timeline, but the idea would be to conduct 3 open house type events for the public over the span of the month of January. Leading up to these, they would advertise the events and encourage participation of the community. We would also set up an email address, which will be petersburgplan@petersburgak.gov for folks to send in their ideas if they could not attend the meeting. So if you're interested in participating in this, keep an eye out for things in the newspaper or listen on the radio for this to be advertised. So is there any other discussion? All those in favor of moving forward with this plan, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve, for doing that. Next item on the agenda is 17-300, payment in lieu of taxes, Secure Rural Schools funding support letter. Should this letter be sent should also be sent to our federal delegation is one of my questions, but this is a letter that was drafted and sent to us, so if I'm not mistaken, we're just passing this along. So should we send this letter to the list of people at the 4 on the top of the letter, and maybe to our delegation as well?
Can we do this in the form of a motion or no?
Just should we send a letter? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will send the letter. Could you bow to our delegation on that too? Mindy, please. Okay, next item on the agenda is communications. Is there any communications that anybody has received? Seeing none. Assembly discussion items, recognitions. Are there any recognitions by anybody? Member Castro?
Yes. I'd like to recognize the efforts of 5 fire department volunteers who graduated from the ETT certification courses last week. These folks, including Sandy Dixon and many current EMS volunteers, spent the last couple months giving up their weekends and hours following their regularly scheduled work week. The community is much better off thanks to your efforts.
Thank you for that recognition. Member Strand, you have?
Once again, I'd like to recognize the fire department for their prompt response to the latest boat fire. People are leaving heaters on their boats to keep them warm, and apparently they're catching fire. But the fire department is on the spot.
Yeah, very good. Member Stan Gregor.
I would like to ask members of the community to seriously consider putting your name in for the hospital board. I'm of the opinion that board is of critical importance right now with the hospital having many issues in their long-range planning, and good, thoughtful people are welcome, so please give it some consideration.
Any other recognitions? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, which is B, and the member Mucci, this is marine passenger fee. You asked to have this on there. Would you like to speak to this?
Sure, just a little bit, Mr. Mayor. A couple weeks ago, I talked about the senior citizen sales tax exemptions and the possibility of this marine passenger fee. And over the last couple of weeks, it's appeared to me that those two items need to be separated. And so at the next meeting, I'll have some more information regarding this marine passenger fee for discussion at the council or at the assembly level, and with the possible idea of putting together a community group that would look into this marine passenger fee and see the pluses and the negatives to the community of Petersburg and some of the impacts it could have to the cruise ships industry, the visitor industry in Petersburg. So I just wanted to let you know that I haven't forgot about this. It's still on the radar, and I'll have some more information, and hopefully it'll be a discussion item at the next assembly meeting.
Thank you, Member Mucci. And another thing I was thinking about this was going over the agenda and saw this topic under discussion, and reading the front page of the last Petersburg pilot. We talked at the last meeting about forming a tax committee. Well, I think before we, this is just my opinion, before we ask for letters of people that want to be on this committee, maybe we should pick a date, form an ad hoc committee, and give them specifics. Does that sound like an idea, assembly members, or should we just let them run rampant and come back with 1,000 ideas? Or should there be specific ideas we should ask them, this ad hoc committee, to address? I understand, Gregor, I know you're passionate about this idea.
Okay.
I could tell the look on your face.
I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Kind of like Manager Giesbrecht was talking about before, even in the community discussion. I like the idea of painting with the broad brush because some people have really creative ideas that could be worthwhile pursuing. So there's that side of the coin where I think we can get, it's good to think outside the box, and having rigid criteria for that could be limiting. Then the flip side is, as you verbalized, was you could come back with 1,000 ideas and not know which way to go. So I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I'm good either way.
Okay, because I read that in the paper, and I haven't seen anything advertised where we're asking for people to sit on a committee of this fashion, have we yet?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask Debbie where that stands. I think Jeff was still talking about that, and I wasn't sure if the assembly had weighed in to say you wanted us all to advertise and start this process, or if that was going to be something the chamber or another group. So, yes, if the assembly wants me to advertise for this, we'll make it happen.
So, Member Mucci, do you think...
Mayor?
Yes.
So, my intention is to at least look at the marine passenger fee aspect of things. I'd like to see at least some discussion at the assembly level to see if we would want to put a notice out to the community that we were looking for some community input from community members who might have some ideas about this marine passenger fee. I think the senior citizen tax exemption and the marine passenger fees are two different ideas, and right now I'm just concerned with the marine passenger fees and the impact it could have for the community, and look at any other impacts it might have to the community, whether it's going to deter visitors from coming to Petersburg or the Petersburg Borough. But my intention was to see if there was any interest at the assembly level to put a notice out to the community to try and get a group of individuals, business people, and private citizens from around the community and the borough to help us, or help me, or help the assembly decide if this would be a good thing for the assembly of Petersburg, or the borough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see where they should be separated, and maybe from your conversation here, you would rather see more of a marine passenger fee committee than just go with the general tax committee?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, you're going to bring this up at the next meeting, correct? Or should we have it as an action item, or do you think we'll have enough ideas for us to move forward with it?
I'll have some ideas. We could put it on there as an action item, Mr. Mayor, and we could see what the Assembly wants to do, and I guess we can sort it out that first meeting in December, I guess.
Okay, sounds good.
Mr. Mayor, would this be something that, and Jeff, this is also directed to both of you guys, would this be something that might just come out with these town hall meetings, so to speak, these informal meetings, and like after the first meeting, we might find that there's a real interest for that, and that we might be able to have just a group spur off on that? I mean, would that help us, maybe kind of come up with a better idea instead of see where we're headed?
Good thought.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Mucci.
I think there's some interest at the local level with some of the business owners who deal with the visitor industry, and we could certainly, it would probably come up in later meetings, but I'm just trying to sort out why we wouldn't want to just look at it right now and see the effects it could have as opposed to waiting until March or April. I think the marine passenger fee is something that if we all thought it was a good thing to get on board with, that we could kind of work to kind of put it all together so that it would be implemented in the upcoming visitor industry season.
Okay, thank you, Member Stanton Gregor.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Member Mucci. I'd like to see it as an action item for the next meeting.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and then it can morph off into these town hall meetings too if necessary, so. All right, Jeff, we'll try to get something on the next, or we will get something on the next agenda to discuss in the Assembly to take action or not, so thanks.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And item C, budget.
It's already been brought up, so I'm just going to...
Okay.
Yep.
I guess I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's just the quickest vote of all.
Thanks.
Who wants that? I better put it in the corner, or some other one I've got at home.
Exactly.
I like that one right there.